travel isn't just about destinations, it's about the people you meet, the cultures you immerse yourself in, the stories you carry home. I'm Relebogile Mabocha, and on my travel feature, I take you on a journey beyond the guidebook. Each week, I connect with fellow travelers, insiders, and storytellers to bring you the heart of every place. Whether it's a hidden gem right here in South Africa or a dream destination abroad. Join me as we travel through conversations, memories, and inspiration. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Let's walk the talk.
702.
10:36. We're going to speak about the post office now. Do you still use the post office? Does anybody actually still pay attention to happenings around the post office or understand its relevance? I always hear people talk about courier, but you've got so many areas that are far-flung where courier companies simply do not reach, where we need post office. And I think that's part of the argument that I always hear when people talk about why it's important to get the post office back into shape, to shape it up and to make sure that it's functional again, and that you don't have people saying, no, I haven't received my mail for months on end. So that's why the post office still very much matters. So that's the next conversation that we're going to talk about. We understand that the post office is on course to finally making a profit in 2029. We'll be speaking to the Portfolio Committee on Communications and Digital Technologies. What are your questions about the recovery plans around the post office? Please call in on 011-883-0702, 072-702-1702. What are your wishes? Do you want to see our post office, or does it not matter in your world? Let's have that conversation now.
For more about 702,
Go to primemediaplus.com.
All right, we're in conversation now with Shaik Subrathie, who's a member of the Portfolio Committee on Communications and Digital Technologies. He's also whip of the ANC Study Group on Communications and Digital Technologies in Parliament. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to Radio 702.
Thank you so much for having me on the show.
I mean, over the past few years, we've heard a lot of concern about the state and the well-being of the post office. So when we start seeing news that it could become profitable again, it does feel encouraging. Let's speak a little bit about what the Portfolio Committee now understands. I mean, you as a committee have also expressed concerns in the past.
Yes, indeed. We, as a Portfolio Committee in the 7th administration, we inherited, we came in at the time when the post office was just placed under business rescue, which was done towards this round about December 2024. And we came in as a Portfolio Committee around about July 2024. So we inherited oversight over the post office that was now under business rescue. It was saved. Business rescue, firstly, you must understand, saved the post office from liquidation, which would have meant that there would have been no post office at all. So that's the one plus, the business rescue. So we came in at a point where we were really, as I say to members, I say to them, it was in an ICU and it continues to remain in an ICU unit of a hospital. In other words, it had significant challenges. It went through a very, very difficult task. Business rescue took it through the process of rationalizing the numbers of staffs. Lots of staff sizes was reduced, the number of branches was reduced, and it was a painful task. I recall there was a day called 31st of October was known as Day Zero. And you can imagine as a new portfolio committee with new members coming in, we're hearing of Day Zero that if the post office doesn't get 3.8 billion, it's not going to be able to continue. So those are all the challenges we faced with. And I must say, it's so heartening that almost a year later, we're starting to see the silver lining. We're starting to see light at the end of the tunnel. We're not out of the woods, but it's been a difficult task. The 3.8 billion never came. Treasury never had the money. So Post Office had to go into austerity measures, realigning themselves. And obviously, they've cut down their staff size significantly. They reduced their store sizes. They right-sized it to about 650 plus minus stores. And now we're in a space where for the first time, and then additionally, and more recently, we've had the Minister of Employment and Labour and Employment through the UI Trust allocating about 400 million rands for 6 months assistance to assist in paying the salaries of post office. So what we're seeing right now is we have a right-sized post office that has done a deep dive into what are the challenges. I mean, one of the questions I asked yesterday in the portfolio committee was, what is your vision of that post office? Because one of the questions that's been arising is that imagine in the rural areas, we have this infrastructure of post offices. Okay? What's going to happen in them, given the fact that everyone's moving into a digital world? Is there still a need for that? And that is a pressing question. One must also understand that this infrastructure that we have of post offices dispersed all around the country is a national asset. Because if you look at a rural area, the only historically form of connectivity, communication, connection with the outside world formerly was that post office. The question is, how do we refurbish, how do we reposition that infrastructure to become a relevant structure of the post office to serve its people? And I think that's where the vision is, to develop it into a strong ICT hubs with internet cafes over there. And the intention then is also what we're seeing happening over the next 5 years. And as you had alluded to in your earlier comment, was we at the moment the post office is making a loss. And what we received yesterday was what we call the strategic plans, the 5-year plans. And it seems that post office migrating to the implementation of its plans, of course, from a loss to a profit situation in 2029. Now, one important element that will take place is the migration of what we call the revenue mail, the postal mail, because we know the people are increasingly lesser dependent on mail delivery because people are moving to the electronic space. But what we're going to see is that revenue being replaced from going towards more e-commerce revenue, as well as in terms of the courier services. Because what we realized we have in terms of the infrastructure of these post offices in the far-lying areas, we have an infrastructure which caters for the last mile delivery. So we want to make them ports of courier, because this is something other courier companies who are basically competitors of the remodel post office don't have. But we have that infrastructure. So the idea is to migrate to e-commerce revenue, to focus on courier services, and to really reposition it to make it a vibrant ICT hub. And that is our vision. Really, as a portfolio committee, we are passionately seized by ensuring that we don't lose this post office, that we refurbish it and we recapacitate it to ensure that it becomes a port of hope and a significant player in the rural, particularly in the rural economy. Needless to say, in the urban economies, we have connectivity, we have a reasonable structures. But the challenge for us is this, largely in the rural areas, to how can we use the post office to boost rural economies. And I think that was largely around which the conversation went in. And we were quite happy in what we received. Needless to say, another element is important, is we're looking at, the post office is looking at bringing in strategic partners. Partners that will not only invest funding, but partners that will add value, like we're speaking of couriers, we're speaking of e-commerce, partners that will come in and add value in both instances, both in terms of capital as well as strategic relationships.
All right, I'm going to take a quick break and then I'm going to ask you a little bit more. I do want to know about the kind of faith you have in what follows the business rescue process, how the vision that you speak of for the post office comes to life. But first, let's take a break. Can you hear me, Shaik? Shaik Subrathie? I'm not sure what's going on. I'm going to take a quick break and then we're going to try to get his line back up.
Travel isn't just about destinations. It's about the people you meet, the cultures you immerse yourself in, the stories you carry home. I'm Relebogile Mabotja, and on my travel feature, I take you on a journey beyond the guidebook. Each week, I connect with fellow travelers, insiders, and storytellers to bring you the heart of every place. Whether it's a hidden gem right here in South Africa or a dream destination abroad. Join me as we travel through conversations, memories, and inspiration. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
702
Let's walk the talk on 92.7
and 106 FM.
10:46. We're in conversation with Shaik Subrathie, who's a member of the Portfolio Committee on Communications and Digital Technologies. We're discussing specifically the plans to make the post office, the plans for the post office to become profitable in 2029. Shaik, there are people who've sent in voice notes, who've commented on our conversation on what their vision is for South Africa's post office. 011-883-0702 if you want to put a question to Shaik Subrathie, or 072-702-1702 for voice notes and WhatsApps. Shaik, please just take a listen to this.
Tshidi, how's it, Malcolm here? Tshidi, I don't know what this whole post office thing's all about. Is it another avenue for filling pockets? Because in my world, in 2025, in our kids' world, in the next 5 or 10 or 15 years, everything is digital. I don't remember anybody posting a letter to me other than a doctor's letter or a lawyer's letter or a statement. But not even that is posted anymore. It's all digital. So where in the next 5 years till 2029 do they want to have a post office, and what exactly is that post office going to handle? Is it going to handle post? Is it going to handle digital post, which comes to our emails anyway? And in this whole digitizing world, why are we still messing around with post offices and letters? That is my question.
Shaik Subrathie, that's a question many will ask. I mean, as you consider that question about what will the post office be doing, I think for me, there's a question of trying to deal with cyber attacks. Hackers are definitely always one step ahead. So let's speak about that. And I suppose the role, and I think you've touched on it, maybe you missed it, of the vision that you have of what the post office will become. It's not about letters. It must be able to compete with the many courier companies that are all over at least urban areas in the country.
Yes, I think the question is a very relevant question, and that's exactly as I alluded to, is what, as a portfolio committee, we have been seized with. We acknowledge that the entire world is migrating at a fast pace to a digital world. And so the question arises, and as the caller has asked, we've got this infrastructure, and let's, for the moment, just imagine all this infrastructure that's sitting largely in the rural areas, because that's where the problem and the challenges lie, because they still remain disconnected from though digitally, but still disconnected from largely the economic hubs. So that brick and mortar that is there, what do we use it for? Now let's very quickly, that's the question we've been asking for, and that's where the strategic plan comes in to migrate from, as you rightly pointed out, we're going to see a reduction in postal mail. In other words, mail will reduce, but there's one rider to that. What will not drop is everybody, if you look at e-commerce and look at Takealot and all these e-commerce, all these courier companies, people will purchase things online, but there is a need for a delivery to take place of that item. That is still there. That item needs to be delivered. And the post office has one unique in that it is licensed to deliver the sub 1 kg parcels. So any e-commerce will require the delivery of that item. Now, what we see is largely in that aspect, that post office still fulfilling the critical point of presence in the rural areas where that item can be brought to that established brick and mortar post office, and from there what we call the last mile of delivery through bikes, through bicycles, and whatever the case may be, through the rural areas, to the hills and the villages. So that concept of mail, of parcel delivery, and that is why we said we envisage the courier business to be, that's where we see the courier business, courier income to increasing, as well as e-governance, everything relating to e-commerce we want to be able to do in our post offices. You know, in addition to what the post offices are doing in terms of licenses, in terms of your move onto e-commerce, that particular post office must become the center of everything. You know, if you need, it must be like an office. When you go there, it must be a vibrant ICT hub. So remember, the caller is quite right, and we are acutely aware of it. That's the challenge we face, and that's what we received yesterday, is that we're going to revitalize these all post offices to become vibrant ICT centers, courier centers, information centers to serve all people.
Shaik Subrathie, the question for me is about bringing that vision to life. You know, it's one thing to have a vision, but it's another to also then have business rescue practitioners who must exit. And then you need to have the business run itself, take charge of itself. The confidence the committee has in actually seeing this unfold, as opposed to yet another collapse, yet another bailout for the post office.
Okay, so we are quite happy that at the moment, that's another question we've been asking is, when is the rescue practitioner, business rescue, the DRPs, the business rescue practitioners exiting the system? And we have been informed that it's imminent. And when I say imminent, we mean in a couple of new months. I think there's a process where they're going to apply to the court and show to the court that they have substantially met the DRP conditions. I think it's over 75% of the conditions have been met, and then they will be released by the court. So we're quite happy and we're quite grateful that process is imminent. Now, what has been set up is a task team comprising of members from the finance department, from treasury, from the Department of Communications, as well as one of the banks, a quick conflict, whether it's the Development Bank of South Africa, DBSA. And the reason we are an important player is because one of the questions we ask, if you have the department there and treasury there only, you're still dealing with government officials who might not have familiar with the nuances of the real business, what's going on there. And hence, another member of that task team is this bank, which brings with it all the types of concerns that we have had in terms of strategic thinking, repositioning, making sure that we get who is adept and who is au fait about the reality of how businesses are operating. So we're hoping that task team, its task is now to bring in strategic partners and players who will aid. And they will now, I think there's over 50 submissions have been received. And their task is to now screen all those strategic alliances and partnerships to see what is the best fit to hold the hands of the post office to achieve its vision. So we're happy that there is a process in place that's going to take over. And the second element, and maybe is also, we've also asked the question that the existing team that is there at SAPO, has really, what is their levels of skills? And in the last two portfolio committees ago, we questioned that. And we're quite happy that the current acting CEO, CFO have got huge amount of institutional knowledge. And they are now the ones who are really holding the fort. So that continuity is also there.
More WhatsApps for you here. Dennis says, as far as rural post office is concerned, let the ShopRite and Boxer shops handle any service needed. Post office is a dinosaur, goes further. I don't know if you want to comment on this one. Somebody says people don't understand that the post office has a massive role to play. For one, they hold our postal codes. No postal codes, no address. Your house doesn't exist without it. Every part of digital communication is linked to the postal codes. Don't know if you want to comment on that.
I think for me, and I think I welcome the feedback, and this really sharpens us as a committee. But we constantly ask the question that is there relevance of the post office? And now this is a new dimension and a useful dimension. The issue is, where is that ShopRite? I mean, this brings an interesting conversation. But inevitably, if you look at the way locations and rural communities are, if you're looking at the hillock and the village, where people are literally staying, they're still a distance away from the post office. So
Yes,
the idea of it, that is the reality. So what we are saying is, and we are seized with this, is that for us as a portfolio committee, we are committed to making the post offices relevant in the context of the digital world, making it business-like, and importantly, I think making sure that the digital divide is bridged between us in the urban areas and those in the rural areas to make sure, I mean, we've got research and our students want to do printing and all the whole idea is that post office must satisfy that niche market specifically for the rural communities, because that's the context we're talking on. And needless to say, when it comes to urban, they have to be operating at a supersonic level to be competitive with the many competition that there are in the urban areas.
And then one more WhatsApp for you now. Should the post office model not be reviewed? They can add the type of service that Postnet offers to their offering while maintaining the current service to specifically the rural population. That's Noni. I do think that it's a little bit in line with the vision. Her question.
I mean, Postnet is our number one competitor. Let's put it that way. So yes, we need to better offer what Postnet is doing for us to remain relevant. So that's the benchmark, and certainly the post office is committed, is fully aware of it, and they want to equal, if not better, the postal services of Postnet, specifically in rural areas, and more importantly, equally important, better it in the urban areas.
Please take a listen to this voice note from one of our listeners.
CDM team, I suggest the solution to the post office is rebranding, because the current brand name cannot even sell Mabagu or Magwinya. So why? Because the brand name has lost its credibility, has lost its trust. People trust Postnet and Pep Store than the post office. So the solution is rebranding. Otherwise, just a futile exercise. David.
All right, David, thank you so much. This is really our last question. The solution is rebranding. Is that the solution?
That's an interesting concept.
Yeah.
It's never come to our mind. But listen. I think in English you say the proof of the pudding is in the eating. I think if we can really get that old post office to really be what the future purpose vision, if we can make that be that, I think we can still live. But I think the suggestion that you have made is something certainly I would, in the next portfolio committee, raise it as a suggestion. As we reposition and revitalize, one might want to consider that. I mean, I can't say yes, but I can say that it's food for thought, and certainly something that I'll take to the portfolio committee.
Thank you so much. I wonder what people would say. I'm going to leave it on that note. Thank you so much. That's Shaik Subrathie, who's a member of the Portfolio Committee on Communications and Digital Technologies, also an ANC MP who's part of the ANC Study group on communications and digital technologies. I wonder how people will actually respond to the idea of a name change for the post office. I'm going to leave this conversation on this note. We still need the post office to send gifts and letters the way we used to. This listener says they miss going into the post office to buy stamps to send letters. It made me think of Christmas when I was a kid. Very little human being. And you'd know that every season the post office, the mailman, will arrive with a stack of Christmas cards. That was lovely, but it's just nostalgia. Thank you for that.